All right, good evening. Today we are learning Maseches Bava Daf Chav Daled, and we're starting at a Mishnah toward the bottom of Chav Gimel Amud Beis. The Mishnah asks a question that we seemingly already know the answer to, which is why we'll have to reframe it. The Mishnah asks, Ezehu tam ve'ezehu muad. How do we define a tam, or what is a tam and what is a muad? And what we're now going to see is how do we transition back and forth fluidly from one to the other. And says the Gemara, muad kol shehi'idu bo shlosha Yomim. Yomim is a key word here, and we'll get back to that. The Mishnah says that we define a muad as any animal about which there was testimony over 3 different days. The tam, how do we define a tam? Once it doesn't gore for 3 days, then it goes back to tam status, divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So according to this first approach, it's 3 days on, you are a muad, and if you have 3 days of not goring, then you revert back to a tam. It just means, but I don't know yet. It seems that way. It does seem that way. Says the Gemara of Rabbi Meir Omer, muad, no. Muad is shehidu bo shlosha pe'amim, not 3 days in a row. Any 3 gorings in a row. They could be at 1 p.m., 2 p.m., and 3 p.m. And if it happens even in one day, whereas Rabbi Yehuda would say that's insufficient for establishing muad, the second sheet of Rabbi Meir would say, shehidu bo shlosha pe'amim, you become a muad even if it's 3 times in less than 3 days. Doesn't need days, it just needs episodes. The tam, kol sheyu hatinokos memash mishin bo ve'eno nogeach. How do we define when someone is docile, when an animal is calm? That's when they're able to play with children and not gore them. Now, that doesn't mean we should use our children as litmus tests, just to be clear. It's not wise. But the Gemara does say that that is one way to measure. If in fact the scenario presented itself where a little kid on a farm was playing with the bull and he kept kicking him in the stomach and the bull just ignored him, okay, he's a tom, very good. But that has to happen multiple times. That doesn't have to happen multiple times. And this one, in this occurrence with Reb Meir, as long as it can happen at all, that he's not nogech, a little child, then he's back in the status of tom. Now we're going to learn a famous machlokes, Abaye and Rava. And to be clear, this machlokes, Abaye and Rava, only applies within the shita of Rabbi Yehuda. Let's remember shitas Rabbi Yehuda. We define a muad based on edus over 3 days. So what's the machlokes? My time with Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Abaye, because we have a pasuk. The pasuk reads, Kishor naga chumi timol shilshom v'lo yishmerenu be'alav shalem mishalem shor tachas ashor v'mesiyelo. So here's how Abaye parses out the pasuk. Timol is chad, that's 1 day. Mitmol, the mem in mitmol is another, that's 2 days. Trey and shilshom tlasa. Those first 3 times are used to establish muad. However, v'lo yishmerenu be'alav asan l'negicha revis. The first 3 are establishing, but not yet muad, and the 4th is muad. However, Rava Amar Tmol mitmol is chad, shilshom is trey, v'lo yishmerenu ha'id nachayev. That according to the second approach of Rava, you're already muad by the 3rd. So the machlokes is about the 3rd day. According to the first approach of Abaye, you're not yet muad on day 3. You're only muad on the 4th day. And according to Rava, again, we're in the camp of Rabbi Yehuda where we need days. And according to Rava, we are in a scenario where you are going to be muad already by your 3rd occurrence. Rav Meir, my time. Rav Meir, who says that we don't need to have 3 different days to establish an animal as a muad. We only need 3 occurrences, even if they're in the same day. Where does this come from? Tanya. Last line of Chav Gimel Amud Beis, as we turn to the top of Chav Dal Amud Aleph. Rav Meir, richek nigichosav chayiv. If the damages that the shore has over the course of many days turns the animal into a muad, kirev nigichosav lo kol shekeh. If over the course of 3 days, your gorings have made you into a wild animal, then isn't it true that if you gore more frequently, that you're for sure a muad? Rav Meir gives a pashut of, please excuse us, a balabata shekal v'chomer. Like, if over the course of 3 days, your animal is acting like a behemoth, then of course, if he does so over the course of 1 day, you're acting like a nut. You're acting like a crazy, psychotic animal. Of course, you're going to be muad. Says the Gemara, that's not true. And I can show you, says the Gemara, that Rav Meir is wrong. Amrulo, this is all part of the Brisa. They said back to Rav Meir, no, Zava tochiach. By a Zava Gedola. She has to see over 3 different days in order for her to become a Zava Gedola. Sherichka re'ioseha tmeya. When does she become a Zava Gedola? That's only if her re'ios are on different days. But kirva re'ioseha, but if her re'ios were jammed into 1 day, then she would not be a Zava Gedola. Beautiful raya. Amar Lehen, Rav Meir says back to them, no. Harehu Omer v'zos tia tumaso bezovo. Tala akasu v'esazav b're'iyos v'esazava b'yamim. That's only true over there by the world of Zav, where by men it's the number of re'iyos without days, but by women, and that's the focus of our conversation, that they need yamim. But it's exeris akasu by a woman who's a Zava that we go by re'iyos. So if we're not in the world of re'iyos, we would make our typical kal v'chomer like we did. Like we said on the top line, that if richek nigichosav chayev, then kirev nigichosav lo kol shekain. Of course, that would be true. Says the Gemara, mimai dahai v'zos the meute zava mere'iyos. How do we know that when the pasuk of vizos tiyas tumaso bezovo, that when it says vizos, it teaches us a difference between men and women, that by men we have re'ios, but by women we don't focus on the number of re'ios alone. We need re'ios plus the number of days. Says the Gemara, Ema, perhaps we should say that vizos is the me'ute zav miyamim, that it's not to teach us that a zava doesn't count to re'ios in any one day, but perhaps to expand the requirement of days even to a zav. Says the Gemara, no. The Gemara says we can't say what you just recommended, that vizos teaches us that a man has to count over many days, because manakeva b'yamim, af zachar b'yamim, says the Gemara, we make a comparison between a zachar and a nekeva, that it needs to be a focus on days, both for men and for women. Says the Gemara, why? V'lakish nekeva lezachar. Maybe we should reverse the comparison and say ma zachar b're'iyos, af nekeva b're'iyos. Why don't I start making a comparison from the man's world where we follow re'iyos, and maybe she too should become a zava gedola, even with multiple re'iyos in one day? Says the Gemara, no, hamiyet rachmana v'zos. The Gemara, it's a little bit of a circular dialogue. I asked you about Zos. You said X. I said, why did you learn it that way? You said, because I learned it that way. So I asked the Gemara, Ma Reis, why did you use the word Vizos to make the diuk that you made? You used the word Vizos to make one diuk and not the other. Why did you do that? So the Gemara responds, a quarter of the way down on Chaf Daled Amud Aleph, Mistabra, it's logical to do this. Mistabra, that because we're Koi B'Re'iyos, because the Pasuk is talking about Re'iyos, therefore, Memayet Re'iyos. We're therefore, if we're talking about Re'iyos by a man, we're therefore, when we say vizos, which is an exclusionary word, it's therefore teaching us that we don't only look at re'iyos by a woman, but kaibi re'iyos memaid yamin. But you're trying to argue that the word vizos should exclude a discussion of days by the man. We're talking about re'iyos. We weren't talking about yamin. So that's how the Gemara concludes this section in supporting Rav Meir. Rav Meir is of the opinion that he makes the kol shekain like the one at the very top line of Chaf Daled Amud Aleph, that if richek negichos of chayev, he says days don't matter when it comes to negichos, because if it's true that over 3 days your animal can become a muad, all the more so if he gores 3 times in one day, he becomes a muad. And I'm not worried about zava. That's a gzeres akasu. Don't ask me from zava. That world is too specific. Another brisa that correlates very strongly with our Mishnah, about a quarter of the way down, and the Gemara says Tanu Rabbanan. The Gemara says we have a brisa, and similarly, Ezuhu Muad, just like we asked in our Mishnah. What are the parameters of Muad? And here the Gemara says, Kol she'idu bo shlosha yamim. That's like we saw, that's the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah, that we follow the number of days. V'tam, and here we have a blend. V'tam shuatinokos memash meshin bove eno nogech de Rabbi Yossi. This is different than our Mishnah in one way. It's very much like Rabbi Yehuda in the first part by Muad, but it's like Rav Meir in regards to how the animal becomes a tam again. So here it's a mix. It's not a straight shot. Reb Shimon Omer Muad kol she'idu bo shlosha pa'amim. Reb Shimon's first part about Muad is similar to that shita of Rav Meir, that we follow 3 episodes and occurrences as opposed to days. But we're only talking about Shlosha Yamim for Chazara when it goes back to normal and doesn't misbehave. And the Gemara, based on this brisa, tries to pick on the following. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Ada bar Ava, Halacha k'Rav Yehuda b'Muad, she harei Rav Yossi modelo. The Gemara says we paskin like Rav Yehuda when it comes to Muad, which is that we follow 3 days as our parameter and not 3 occurrences. Why? Because Rabbi Yossi agreed. And the halacha is like Reb Meir when it comes to how we determine a tam to become tam again, which is that he can play with that animal, with that bull, and the bull won't gore him. Why? Because Rabbi Yossi's shita was a blend of muad according to Rabbi Yehuda and tam according to Reb Meir. Says the Gemara, okay, but there was another way to learn this new brisa. It could be Amar le Rava le Rav Nachman. Rava said to Rav Nachman. Rava was a student of Rav Nachman. He lived in the next generation after him. The lema Amar halacha k'Reb Meir b'muad. Why don't we say that halacha is like Rav Meir in muad? Shaharei Reb Shimon modelo, because Reb Shimon agrees with that opinion. Why don't we say that? Why don't we learn from Reb Shimon instead of Reb Yossi? And then we should say, V'alacha Reb Yehuda b'tam Reb Shimon modelo. There were two shitas here. Why did you side with Reb Yossi instead of the shita of Reb Shimon? So says the Gemara, Omar le ana ki Reb Yossi svir le. Rav Nachman says back to Rava, I always hold like Reb Yossi. Why? The Reb Yossi nimuko imo. Reb Yossi always had his reasons about him, meaning he was very clear in his halacha. Everything was super clear. Take a look at Rashi, a third of the way down. Dibur hamaschel nimuko imo, ta'amav v'ra'ayosav imo. His reasons and his proofs were always with him. He didn't show up to the meeting unprepared. When he walked into shiur, he was ready to go. You asked him a kasha, he had a response right away, and I'll bring you a raya from here, and I'll give you an explanation of that. Everything was perfectly shagur b'fiv, like on a silver platter. Here you go, the whole sugya is clear. So Reb Nachman Paskend, like this blended shita, he really holds like Reb Yossi in the Brisa. But Reb Yossi in the Brisa is like the muad of Reb Yehuda in our Mishnah, that we need 3 days to establish muad. And like Reb Meir in our Mishnah, that the child has to play with the bull in order to see that he's no longer a minageach, that the animal is no longer dangerous. The Gemara says a little bit more than halfway down on Chavdal and Alfi Bailahu. The Gemara asks an interesting question. Shlosha Yamim de Katani. When Rabbi Yehuda / Rabbi Yossi says that we have to wait 3 days to establish an animal as a muad, when we said that to Katani in our Mishnah, was that liyude Tura? Was that in order to establish the shor as an animal that's muad, or liyude Gavra, or to establish the man as an unsafe manager of that animal? Who's the problem? Is the problem the animal? Or is the problem that the owner of the animal did not manage his animal 3 times? Which one was it? So says the Gemara, Lamai nafkamina. What would the difference be between saying we're trying to place blame on the animal versus placing blame on the person? The Gemara says, the asu tlasa kite sade b'chad yoma. Let's say that we had 3 animals show up and say that Betsy the cow was dangerous. I amresli ude Torah miya'ed. If you want to say that they're coming here to blame the animal, and witness, the pair of witnesses number 1 says Betsy killed so-and-so at 9 a.m. and witnesses number 2 say Betsy killed so-and-so at 11 a.m. and the third couple said the same at 12 a.m. So now 12 p.m. So now you have 3 different testimonies about 1 cow. Now the cow is a muad. However, v'i amresli ude gavra. But if you want to say that when we see the pasuk of mitmol shel shom, that we're trying to establish the manager, the owner of the shore, as guilty, so that's not so simple. Then lo miyayid, he would not become guilty based on 3 kitei edim who come in the same day. Why not? Because meimar omar, because the owner can say, I had no idea. Hashtahu de kamisadu bi. Only now are they coming to, I didn't know. I had no idea that my animal did 3 things wrong. You can't make me muad if my animal does 3 things wrong. I didn't see them. I was out of town. I had no idea. I was on the plane. When I land, I got 3 phone calls. They got to go to Bezdin. You got 3 different kitei edim against you. So therefore, the Gemara says, which one is it? That would be the nafkamina. The nafkamina would be is if 3 kitei edim showed up. Says the Gemara, 3/4 of the way down, 15 lines or so from the bottom of the page on Chavdal and Madalaf Tashma. The Brisa says, Ein hashor nase muad. A shor cannot become muad. Ad sheya'idu bo bifnei bailim u bifnei bezin. Testimony has to be given before bailin and before bezin. It's both, not either or. He'idu bo bifnei bezin v'shelo bifnei bailim. If the edim only showed up before bezdin, but not before the bailim, or bifnei bailim v'shelo bifnei bezin, eino nase muad ad sheya'idu bo bifnei bezin u bifnei bailim. It has to be that the witnesses who are presenting can only make an animal muad if they present both to the bezdin and to the person who is the baal. Says the Gemara, He'idu shnayim berishona, v'shnayim b'shniya, v'shnayim b'shlishis. Harekan shalosh edios. If you have 3 sets of edim that give edus, one after the next, but now we have 3 sets of edim that have given testimony that Betsy, my cow, killed at 9, 11, and 1 p.m. respectively. Behain edus achas le'azama. This is a unique din in the world of edim zomamin. We're familiar from Shas with the idea of edim zomamin, that if there are witnesses who testify, let's say they testify about me, that I did a crime and I'm therefore chayav punishment X, and we therefore find out, that those edim were invalid because of the famed claim of imanu hayisem. Those edim could not have possibly witnessed what they claimed to have witnessed because they were out of town, they were in Hawaii when that happened. So then we call them edim zomamin, and ka'asher zamam la'asos la'achiv, they get the punishment that they tried to bring about on me. So now, when we have 3 sets of edim who are coming to say that I am a muad, that my animal is a muad. We treat them all like one kas hazama, and that is that if nimtzeis kas rishona zomemes, if the first of the three sets of edim become zomemin, they were in Hawaii, hare kan shtei edios, that means that there are only two pairs left. The hu pater behem turin, everyone's pater. I, as the Baal, am pater because all three sets of edim didn't pan out. And they are pater because in order to be chayiv on Eidei Hazama, all three pairs of edim have to have the same din. And now we've only proved that one is. Nimtzeis kashni as omemes. What if now we have two? We have the first kas and the second kas are both guilty. They're both found to be edim zomim, and they were in Hawaii together. Harekan edus achas. So now there's only one set of edim who's actually still holding me accountable. The hu pater v'heim turin. Now everyone's going to be pater. There's no edim zomim in here because all three kitei edim have to be looped in together, and I'm pater because there was no real edus because some of the edim were huzam. Nimteis kashlishi zomemes. Now, if we find that all three pairs are zomemin, then kulan chayavin. All of those three pairs of edim are going to be chayav nezek shalem. What were they trying to say about me? That my animal is a muad. What's the punishment if my animal is a muad? Nezek shalem. All three people are now chayiv nezek shalem because of edim zomim. Okay, this is the presentation of the brisa. Now the Gemara poses its question. Let's remember our question. When the psukim mitzmol shel shom indicate that after 2/3 occurrences the animal becomes a muad, were we trying to establish the animal as the muad or the Baal as the muad? Now the Gemara is going to try and give an answer. Bottom line, chaf daled aleph. The I amres liude Torah shapir. If all that you were trying to say over here, this was about my animal, that makes perfect sense. Because if the three edim show up in one day and we validate or invalidate all of their testimony in one day, all of that makes perfect sense. Top of Chavdal Amud Beis Ella, and we're going to be going to the Mishnah, which is 12 lines or so from the bottom of the page. Eli Amris Liude Gavra. If you want to say that this brisa was discussing turning the Baal into someone who himself is muad, he is an irresponsible Baal. Lamer, he can say Lamer Hanach Kamoi. He can say Anan mi hava yadina de basar shlosha yome asu hanim yadele. I had no idea that other sets of edim were going to show up. Hey, what's with the hazama? The first guys who gave testimony came in on their own. They just walked in. What's with the nezek shalem? What? There was no nezek shalem. What's with the three edim functioning as one? They came in one at a time. Amar Ravashi, Amrisa l'shmaisa kame de Rav Kahana. When he quoted this brisa in front of Rav Kahana, but Amar Li, Rav Kahana said back to him, Uli ude Torah minicha. This doesn't even work to make the shiur into a muad if you have three separate couples come in. The lame ruhanach basrai, the later couples, the later kitei edim will say, Anan minayadinan dekol dekoi beidina lasu de betorah kasu. I didn't know all the other people in line were all there for the same thing. How can you loop me together with them? I didn't even know why they were here. What we think we're all. It's not like today where everybody holds up a sign on protesting for or against X. I'm here to say that Phil is a terrible Baal Shor. That's not everybody was sitting there in the Bezdin. They all came for their own reasons. Anan, says the Gemara, great line. Anan l'chiyuv gavra palganiz kasinan. I didn't know that I was going to be part of a trifecta of kitei edim that we're going to make this animal into a muad. So Rav Kahana doesn't understand the whole case at all. How did you ever have a case where there was all three kitei edim were making hazama? They didn't come there together. Says the Gemara, not so fast. The Gemara responds, they all were making eyes at each other. They all knew why each of them. You're here for Karesh? Oh, you're here for Karesh too? Yeah, so they all talked in the waiting room outside of the CRC Bezdin. They all knew why they were there. And that's why our Brisa says that when they went in to give Edus, they were one group as it related to the dinim of Hazam. Had to be that way. Rav Ashi Amar similarly, Shabo Ritzufim, they all showed up at the same time. Oh, what are you here for? Oh, what are you here for? They all knew what was going on. Ravina Amar ben Makirin Bal Hashor, the Ein Makirin Es Hashor. Ravina gives another idea that where all of the people who were there knew me, but they didn't know my animal in detail. Says the Gemara, how does Rav Ashi's answer work? Quarter of the way down. How could it be that if they don't know my animal, how could it be that they would then say that there's any muad that's going, you don't know which animal I'm talking? I have 20 animals. I don't know which animal. How could you say one of my animals is muad? Says the Gemara, Damre Torah nagchana islach bivkarcha. You have a goring animal in your flock. I don't know which one it is. You have to watch all of your flock. So that's why he says with one of these various answers that all of the groups were coming together, and it therefore must be that we are focusing only on the person, only on the animal as becoming muad and not on the person, because if it was on the person, it doesn't work. Because if it's on the person, it doesn't make sense that they're all there for hazama. It doesn't work out, even with all the logistics. Okay, then what about the chatzi nezek? And even with all of that, what if they give edus on the same day, like we said on the earlier part of the blot today, on the previous amud? It doesn't mean you can't say that because I only got all 3 warnings today. I didn't get them over 3 days. And that's why the Gemara says that we hold that we are trying to make the animal muad and not the person. Ibailahu. Let's come back to a sugya that we learned the other day. Hameshase kalbo shel chavero bichavero mahu. Let's say that you have a dog. I take your dog and I force it to bite a third party. That's what the Gemara says. Meshase vaday pater. Let's say I'm the mean guy. I take the dog and I take your dog and I make him bite the third party. For sure, I'm pater because grama ben izakin is pater. It's indirect. So I smack the dog, knowing that he's going to go after you. I smack him with a whip, and he jumps on you and bites you, sinks the teeth in. Halacha is halacha l'maisa pater because grama ben izakin is pater. Bal kelev mai. What's the status of the owner of the dog? Mi amrina, do we say matzi amar le ana mai avidna le? I didn't do anything wrong. So let's say Michael owns the dog, right? So Michael can say, Phil took my dog. I didn't do anything. Michael's the owner of the dog. He didn't do anything. Oh, Dilma, perhaps we should say amrina. We should say. Amrin Le, we say to Michael, who owns a dog, Kevan the Adat bekalbacha, since you should know about your dog, the Mishase Le, umish to say that it could be convinced to do the evil biddings that I want it to do. Lo ibayalach lish havaya. You should never have left it alone. Keep it on a leash. So you should know your dog. So what the Gemara is basically asking is, where does the responsibility lie? It certainly doesn't lie with me who takes Michael's dog and sicks him on another person. That's for sure not, because Grama ben Izakin is pater. However, the question is Michael responsible because he did not yet take enough responsibility? That's the question we're asking. And the Gemara says the third of the way down. Let's see. Amar Reb Zera Tashma, we'll see 2 answers. Vitam. What did we say about an animal that's a tam? We said, Sheyehu hatinokos mimash mishin bo ve'eno nogeach. What did we say about a tam? How do we define an animal that's tam? An animal is defined as tam when there are tinokos, there are children that are messing around with the animal, and the animal doesn't gore them. What's the implication? Hanogeach. If he does in fact gore them, chayev. So Reb Zera is positing from this brisa that Michael would be held accountable because the animal's tam until he's not. But the fact that he is not a tam now makes Michael guilty. That's what the brisa said about our shiur. We said that you're a tam. Let me just finish my makom. The brisa says that if you're a tam, and then we think that it's innocent, but then it starts to misbehave again, then it becomes a mu'at, which means that I, as the Baal, would be chayav for that shiur. Michael would be chayav for his dog, even though I'm the jerk who took his dog and sicked him on somebody else.
So person B is clean.
There's the Baal Kelev, there's the Mishase, and there's the victim.
Right.
So I took your dog and sicked him on a third person. I am for sure pater, you're chayav. That's Reb Zera's suggestion.
Is that vicious?
It's kind of like the way the Gemara is framing it. It's like a muad issue because look at the Mari Makom. The Mari Makom is he was tam until he bit. Now he's not. Now he's a muad.
Yeah,
it's exactly the example.
Claim
should be on the owner because the fact that your animal was willing to bite means you should have done a better shmira.
But the person who took the animal off the leash,
Hashem's not going to be happy with me, but it's still grama ben izakin. It's indirect. I don't think booing is the way we vote down Gemaras, and I don't think it's how you learning Rishonim might help. That's possible. So this is just a suggestion. So let's see what Abaye says. Amar Abaye, he doesn't quite say boo, but he does disagree with the answer. Abaye says, "Miktani naga chayev." We didn't say that by inference. We made an inference. The brisa doesn't say that if this calm animal and all the kids are throwing rocks at it, they're trying to do cow tipping. So whatever the case may be, if the shiur kicks them, the brisa doesn't say they're chayiv. Miktani that they're going to be chayiv, naga chayiv. No. Dilma hanagach lo habetam. Perhaps if this animal misbehaves, he's not chayiv, but he's no longer a tam. He moves back into the category of muad, but with no chiyuv. So there's no raya from Reb Zera as he quotes our Mishnah. It's very possible that when this calm, docile animal, the kids are playing around, they do this every day. The kids are playing around, they throw rocks at the cow, and every time they do, like it kicks its tail, they're having a good time. And one time the kid gets a little too close, and like out of the movies, he lifts up his hind leg and throws the kid 20 feet with a back kick. So there, are you chayiv or not? Reb Zera implies that you are. Abaye says, lav dafka. Perhaps that behavior is what transfers this tam back into a muad. But perhaps the transferring the transferring violence is not actually a chiyuv. That's possible. So Tashma, let's try answer number 2. And we're exactly halfway down on Chav Daled Amud Beis with the second answer for this question. Remember this one? Shisa bo esa kelev, shisa bo nachash pater. If I sick a dog on somebody else or a snake, you're pater. My love, pater mishase v'chayev bal kelev. Perhaps we should infer that when we say pater, we're only speaking about the inciter for being pater because Groma ben Izakin is pater. So I can take a snake, I can put him on your arm, I can take a dog, I can say, go attack that guy over there. And perhaps what the Mishnah says, what the Brisa says is Shisabo, then that guy is the one who's pater. But perhaps the Baal Kelev, perhaps Michael still would be chayiv. And now we have our answer again by inference. The Gemara says, lo, that's not true. Because there's another way to learn this Brisa. Ema, perhaps we can say pater af meshase. For sure the Baal is going to be pater, but even the guy, the mamzer of a guy who took a snake and he stuck his fangs in someone, maybe both of them are pater. You, Michael, are pater because you weren't even involved. You weren't even home. And I am pater because Groma ben Izakin is pater. Maybe nobody's chayiv. See, this is a rarity. We have this in Jewish law a lot, where because of halachic peturim, you could have a case of nezikin where nobody's chayiv, and the victim loses out financially. That can happen. I don't believe in secular law they allow for that to happen, because the claimant is going to say, it's not fair that I'm out. It's not fair. Somebody caused damage. In American law, they would have picked one. They probably would have picked a mishas. I would just have to guess. If you're a violent person, they'll say, what is Michael? Michael wasn't home. I took Michael's dog. Michael's chayiv? No. Secular courts, I'm just guessing, would probably say that I'm chayiv for being mishasa, for inciting. We have this in our freedom of speech until you're inciting violence, right? You didn't do the violence. You okay, for sure the mishasa is going to, this is good marmokum, actually. Okay, we can discuss this another time. But the mishasa here, probably in secular law would have been chayiv. Here, perhaps, everybody's pater. What? No heter. No heter. All right, then the Gemara says, Amar Rava, hold on one second. Im tim tzalomar, if you want to say that hamishasa kalbo shel chaveru b'chaveru chayev, that if I take your dog and stick it on another person, I'm chayev, shisehu hu be'atzmo pater. If you want to say that there's going to be a chiyuv, but shisehu be'atzmo, but if the dog bites me, if I try to be mishasa the dog, I take Michael's dog, try to be mishasa the dog on person X. The dog looks at me and says, you're a fool, and he bites me instead. The Gemara says, you're pater. I'm pater. I'm pater for any damages that I might have caused. Why? My taima? Because if I start out a scenario by doing something irresponsible, and then a second irresponsible thing happens, you can't blame that second case scenario. So if I'm mishasa, I take Michael's dog, I'm mishasa to that, and then it bites the wrong person. Pater. Everybody's pater. Because my intent was to hurt that guy. It ended up hitting. What?
Because you got hurt.
It might not be me. It could be another person. I can't obligate you to pay for the damage if he bites me. And let's say I tried to get person X, the third party, and really it bit the fourth party. Pater. Because my whole intention was off. And therefore any future damages are also pater. Amar le Rav Papa le Rava, Itmar mishmei de Reish Lakish kabaseich. Rav Papa says to Rava, and Rava doesn't like this, but he says to Rava, Reish Lakish said something just like you. Rava lived about 50 years or so after Reish Lakish, be'erech, the 2 generations after Reish Lakish. They probably overlapped in their lifetimes. The Amar Reish Lakish, and we learned this case earlier, and this is going to be our last case that we learned today. Shtei paros b'reshus harabim. There are 2 cows that are in reshus harabim. Achas revutza, one got lazy and sat down right in the middle of the street. The achas mehaleches, and one of them was walking. Uvata mehaleches b'revutza. The animal that's walking is annoyed by the animal that's crouched down in the middle of the road, and he gives him a swift kick to the gut. The answer is petura. But revutza b'mehaleches chayeves. But if the animal that's sitting down kicks the one that's walking, they're chayeves. So what is happening over here? So what do we see? We see that when the revutza is lying down, he's going to be pater. Why? Because he's already doing something wrong. He's already mishane. So all of his future behaviors are also going to be pater too. He's doing weird things now. He's in a sugya of weirdness. You sat down in the middle of reshus, that's not normal. So then if he goes and kicking, that's also pater. So that's the comparison possibly to Rava, because Rava wanted to say that if I take Michael's dog and I sick him on person 3 and he bites person 4, I'm putter for all of it because Ravutza in regards to the case of the cow, or a misbehavior number 1 that I tried to sick him on person number 3. Amar Le, Rava says no. I disagree. I actually would have said that the animal that's lying down that kicks the one that's walking would be chayiv. To Amar La, I could say, Ki islach reshusa liskuye alai. When you are walking by me, you can walk over me while I'm lying on the ground, but levuute be less lach reshusa, but you're not allowed to kick me. Therefore, Rava does not compare himself to the shita of Reish Lakish. So let's just summarize briefly so we know what's going on. We wanted to find out about the case of Meshasa, that if I take your animal and sick your animal on another person, I for sure am putter. You are likely putter. That's what the Gemara seems to conclude. We did a little bit of a comparison between Rava and Reish Lakish, and Rava rejected it. We'll stop right here. Mir Hashem will pick up tomorrow night at the Mishnah at the bottom of Chav Daled Amud Beis. Wishing you all a beautiful night.